Heartbursts by New Amsterdam. No one really knows what an explosion feels like. Sure, people get blown away by the force of them, or crushed under debris, or momentarily deafened by the sound. But the real impact of an explosion is at the center of it, the moment before it goes off, when all that power and danger and brilliance is held together for a brief, fleeting moment. He wouldn't even know how to begin describing it. It's something he's always felt, in a myriad of different grades and shades and flavors. The bright lights, the wisps of smoke, the sheer force. All of it is a part of him, as irrevocably as the sound of his voice, or the curl of a sneer. Or maybe even more so. Explosions are at his fingerprint. Something no one else could hope to imitate or understand. Usually, he'd revel in such uniqueness. Usually, he likes that people cannot hope to understand him. But when he wants to be understood, why does it have to be so damn hard? To be perfectly clear, Bakugo isn't a coward. Any problem he has, any challenge he's faced, he's always met head-on. He's not avoiding anything. As far as he's concerned, this is just one more obstacle that he needs to blast his way through. Unfortunately, the world at large, and especially the person in question, don't seem to have gotten the memo. And so, despite his best efforts, Bakugo is constantly thwarted. For instance, tonight. After a grueling 10 hours of training and pushing their quirks to the limit, Class 2A had finally been allowed to head to the baths. This year, they're staying at a surprisingly quaint inn, the indoor baths mineral-rich and soothing after pushing themselves so hard. His palms are throbbing after a day's work, the muscles in his arms cramping from the recoil of his explosions. Despite this, Bakugo hangs back until he sees the other boys leave the baths, towels around their waist and over their damp hair. He counts them off, running the numbers in his head. When he's satisfied, he finally heads out to the baths. There's only one person left, a bright red smudge in the foggy scene. "Oh," Kirishima says, looking up as Bakugo sinks into the baths beside him. "There you are." Bakugo quirks a brow. He'd expected Kirishima to notice his absence, but maybe not to comment on it. Kirishima hums to himself, and then laughs. "You want to be alone?" Bakugo nods, glad that Kirishima has caught on so quickly. He luxuriates in the warm water, letting his mind drift. That is, until Kirishima starts getting up and out of the water. His eyes flash open. "What the hell are you doing?" Kirishima pauses mid-step, hand extended where he'd been reaching for his towel. "Giving you space. Alone time." He's lucky he's so damn charming in other ways, because Kirishima can be as dense as a rock. Bakugo huffs. "You don't have to leave," he says, as plainly as he possibly can. Kirishima blinks at him, his hair wet and loose around his shoulders, his eyes deceptively wide and round. When he blinks the water out of his eyes, he looks softer than he should. "Oh, okay." He sinks back into the water, and Bakugo lets himself enjoy the quiet moment. As his muscles relax into the heat, so does his mind. Until... "It's just, you said you wanted to be alone, and if I'm here, you're not, are you? If you were waiting for everyone else to clear out, I don't mind giving you space, seriously." He grinds his teeth together. Tense as a rock. It's a wonder Kirishima doesn't sink to the bottom of the bath. "Just stay!" Bakugo barks out. He knows Kirishima could use more time to relax his muscles, having kept up his unbreakable form for longer and longer today. And if he leaves, there was no point in Bakugo waiting for the rest of those extras to clear out. "Okay," Kirishima agrees finally, breathing out. He's a little stiff in the silence, still awkwardly keeps looking over at Bakugo. But it's nice. Soothing. The drip, drip, drip of the water. The warm steam rising. The clean smell of mineral soap. This is what he's been wanting. So when you said alone, shut the hell up, would you? This is what he's dealing with. Is it any wonder it's taken so long? He isn't a coward, and he most certainly isn't a quitter. So he makes up his mind to try again the next day. The August heat is oppressively muggy up north. Humidity weighs down the air, and Bakugo, who's sweaty by nature, constantly needs to peel the back of his t-shirt away from his neck. In some ways, the weather works to his advantage, and he's pushing his quirk to its limits. But today, on their last day of summer training camp, when all he wants to do is relax, the heat keeps him on edge. Or maybe that nervousness is because Kirishima just doesn't seem to be getting it, and Bakugo is running out of ways to make himself clear. Oi, shitty hair! Kirishima is sitting at one of the outdoor picnic tables, sandwiched between Sero and Kaminari. He looks up from shoveling breakfast into his mouth, eyes darting around until they come to rest on Bakugo, and his face relaxes. Yeah? He says, around a mouthful of food, before swallowing. What's up? Bakugo's fingers are tapping against his thigh, not out of nervousness, but impatience. We're going to the festival today, without these losers. He gestures impatiently at the rest of the table. Sero and Kaminari, Ashido and Jiro. The rest of the class is scattered around at the other tables, and he is very much including them in that label. Hey! Ashido and Kaminari call out in unison, offended. And that really just proves his point, doesn't it? Kirishima's lips quirk, and then he shakes his head. Bakugo's heart stutters in his chest. Is Kirishima actually saying no, when he didn't even phrase it as a question? Kirishima says, swallowing so hard his Adam apple bobs in his throat. We are? Bakugo frowns. His expressions are never constrained to his lips and eyes, and instead use the entirety of his face. Now, his jaw moves sideways with his frown, chin jutting out as he fixes Kirishima with a blazing stare. Aren't we? He demands roughly. Though he'd never admit it, the prospect of hanging out at the festival with Kaminari and Sero, and some of the others isn't even that bad. There's no point in being someone like Bakugo, in being Bakugo himself, because who the hell is like him anyway, without an audience to fully appreciate his existence. But lately, he's come to realize that he and Kirishima are falling into a comfortable, and therefore unnerving, pattern. If Kirishima treats Bakugo the same way he treats Sero, the same way he treats Ashido, the same way he treats fucking Deku, then what's the point? There's an impossible expression on Kirishima's face, his lips half parted and his brows drawn slightly together. Bakugo can't tell what he's thinking, and the single moment is stretching into an eternity. Yeah, Kirishima breathes out, when Bakugo's heart feels fit to burst. His lips pull into a happy little smile, and Bakugo's frantic heart slows down enough to do a somersault in his chest. Yeah, let's do that. Trying to get a hold of himself, Bakugo crosses his arms over his chest, and jerks his head towards the main entrance of the inn. Meet me at the gate at 3 then. He stalks off, his dignity in a tattered trail behind him. Summer training camp in their second year is nothing like it was in their first, and for the most part that's fine, because it's not as if last year could have gotten any worse. When Aizawa-sensei had first announced Nagaoka as their destination, he'd been met with confusion. First, because he was announcing the location at all, and second, because it was such a mundane trip. Up in the north, populated but not too busy, surrounded by nature. It was the sort of place a normal school would go for a summer trip. Of course, once they'd realized that, the class had spiraled with building excitement. Yaoyozuru had talked non-stop about the quaint traditional inns up north, and Uraraka had gone on and on about the local cuisine. And Ida had mentioned racing through the hilltops, covered with long windswept blades of grass. Of course, all of those idiots were missing the most important point. So it was up to Bakugo to educate them. "It's the biggest fireworks display in the country, dumbass," he'd said, feet up on the desk and arms crossed over his chest. It didn't really matter which particular dumbass he was talking to, since everyone had been speaking at once up to that point. "None of you have ever seen anything like it." He'd never seen it either. Still hasn't seen it. Because tonight is the first night of the festival. But in that moment, he tried to project an aloof, uncaring, despite the fact that as a little kid, he'd loved fireworks. He still loves them. Feels a satisfaction in watching them that he's never been able to describe. He wonders if Kirishima feels the same way looking at the mountains, knowing they're cut from the same cloth. Now, he dons the yukata he packed, because it was expected, glancing down at the garment ruefully. It's a dark navy, dotted at the hems and sleeves with white and pale yellow and red embroidery. The threads radiate outwards from a circle, mimicking a glow of fireworks against the night sky. The orbi is a dull red, the whole ensemble different from his usual chosen colors, but fitting for the fireworks festival. Bakugo had scoffed at the yukata when his mother had suggested it. It's a pain in the ass having designers for parents. They're always going off about aesthetics and shit, when all Bakugo wants is comfortable, streamlined clothing that doesn't make him look like an idiot. Surveying himself in the mirror, his pale hair like a firework itself against his dark clothing, he wonders vaguely if his mother was right. Does it suit him? Will Kirishima like it? "Don't be stupid," he mutters to himself, folding his hands into the long sleeves. It's so embarrassing to have to worry about these things. Kirishima is waiting for him at the gate, even though Bakugo arrives 5 minutes early. At first, Bakugo is focused on the brightness of Kirishima's hair, the casual smile on his face, the wrinkles at the corner of his eyes as he turns and sees Bakugo. It's only after that he registers what Kirishima is wearing. "Yo, Bakugo!" Kirishima waves one hand frantically. "There you are! Ready to go?" Bakugo comes to stop in front of him, features twisted with irritation. "Yukata." He can feel his face turning red. "Yeah?" Kirishima tilts his head to one side, confused. "Yukata for the festival. Yours looks awesome, by the way. You should wear blue more." Fuck him, Bakugo thinks viciously. If he can't say what he needs to, he's gonna have to destroy Kirishima. It'll be the only option he has left. "Bakugo? Yo yukata!" he barks out, more viciously than he intends. Kirishima looks down at himself, then extends his hand to examine his sleeves. "You like it? I asked for the manliest one they had, and I think they really delivered, right?" Predictably, Kirishima is in a yukata of fire brick red, with a sleek black orbi. He's wearing traditional sandals, and has his sleeves bound up partially back. The real draw, however, is the metallic red thread of the embroidery, creating the image of a dragon curling up from the yukata's hem, and abstract designs of smoke and clouds along the long sleeves. Honestly, it's manly as hell, and cool as fuck. "Whatever." Bakugo hedges, pushing past Kirishima. "Let's just go." Kirishima extends his stride to catch up, coming up beside Bakugo, and draping an arm over his shoulder. Hey, don't be like that. Yours is cool too. Don't be jealous, man." "Who's jealous of you?" Bakugo snaps. Really, it's not like he wants Kirishima to look worse. I'm going to the festival with the champion of our year. Kirishima smirks, not moving his arm from where it rests. A lot of people are going to be jealous. How is it that when even Kirishima says what Bakugo wants him to, he still feels like lighting himself on fire? How is that even fair? Shut up, Bakugo says, shoving Kirishima off him. Kirishima laughs, holding up his hands in surrender. The sound is like the chimes jingling from the stall awnings as they head into the festival. No matter how many he's been to, festivals are always an assault on his senses. The smoke and scent from fried and cooked food, the coloured banners hanging over wooden stalls, the clack, clack, clack of kids running past in wooden sandals, the giggles and conversations, the stall attendants hawking their wares. No matter where he turns, there's something demanding the attention of his eyes, his ears, and nose. But through it all, there's Kirishima's presence by his side. Takoyaki! He points at a stall some 10 feet away, grabbing at Bakugo's wrist. Oh, it looks so good! Wait here, Bakugo says, then pulls away from Kirishima to force his way through the crowd into the stall. Whatever Kirishima calls after him is lost in the noise. It takes a good 10 minutes for Bakugo to elbow his way into the line, place his order, and have a cardboard tray of takoyaki handed back to him in exchange for a handful of coins. Balancing the food carefully, he makes his way back to where he left Kirishima earlier. Hey, where did you... He starts calling out, before stopping short. Kirishima is standing to the side of another stall, hands over his mouth as he laughs. To one side of him is Sero in a black and white patterned yukata. On the other is Kaminari, slapping Kirishima's back and wearing purple, yellow, and black. Bakugo! Kirishima calls out, spotting him. Look, the guy showed up, and they already had... Bakugo skewers a piece of takoyaki on a toothpick and waves it in front of Kirishima's face. I got your fucking food. Kirishima opens his mouth, but before he has a chance to either respond or grab onto the food, Kaminari leans in and plucks the takoyaki off the toothpick. Ooh, looks good. Hot. Kaminari fumbles, but tosses the ball of fried dough into his mouth anyway, hissing in pain before moaning in bliss. That's so good. Give me another one. Get off. Bakugo snaps when Kaminari tries to reach for more. He shoves Kaminari aside, but then Sero is grabbing the cardboard dish out of his hands. Kirishima is laughing, poking another toothpick into the takoyaki. Between the three of them, the 7 small portions are gone within a matter of moments. So good, Sero says approvingly. Let's get more. Or maybe some yakitori next? Bakugo grinds his teeth together, even though he knows this is just going to lead to another infuriating conversation with his dentist. Yes, he grinds his teeth. No, he's not going to stop as long as the world keeps conspiring to drive him nuts. Bakugo? Kirishima asks, patting him on the shoulder. He's already gotten his wallet out. Do you want some yakitori? My treat this time. What's he supposed to say to that? It's what he wants, but not how he wants it? That he didn't buy the takoyaki to share with the extras and force their way into the auspices of his friendship, but instead intended to eat it alone, just Kirishima. And now he wants to eat yakitori with him too, but not if Sero and Kaminari are going to keep hanging around and turning this into, well, a friend thing. Bakugo? Kirishima asks again, softer. You okay, man? Why wouldn't I be? Bakugo grumbles in return. Kirishima blinks up at him, eyes round and full of genuine concern. Bakugo hates it. He hates how much Kirishima does understand, because it makes it so much harder for Bakugo to slow down and explain himself. He's gotten so used to Kirishima just getting him, being the one to make the effort, pulling him into the circle of Class A and caring about him. He's not good at this stuff. And Bakugo has always hated not being good at something. He's never really had to deal with that before, not in any real sense. What he wants usually comes easily to him. It's fine, he says, finally. Let's get yakitori. Whatever. They've eaten their way through half the festival by the time they finally shake Sero and Kaminari, who spot Jiro and Ashido, and decide to go bother them instead. Bakugo breathes a sigh of relief, and Kirishima doesn't insist on joining them. It's hard to still be irritated, with a belly full of fried and grilled food, and Kirishima laughing and talking beside him. He points out every Oni mask, mimicking their exaggerated expressions, and reminisces about trying to catch goldfish at festivals as a kid. You couldn't catch one? Bakugo scoffs. Loser. For some reason, it doesn't sound like an insult. Hey! Kirishima protests. I was, 4? I got better at it eventually. What about you? I bet you caught dozens. Bakugo shrugs, but he's smirking. Of course I did. It's not hard. Even stupid Deku got 1 or 2 somehow. Kirishima laughs. I always forget you two were kids together. You must have been so cute. His cheeks curl. Fuck off, he grumbles. Deku wasn't cute. He was like a little weed. Nah, I bet he was real cute, Kirishima insists. And you, I bet you were like one of those confident kids who talk to anyone, right? With so much fluffy hair. As though to prove his point, he reaches up and runs his hands over Bakugo's hair, forcing his head down. Hey! Bakugo yells. But for some reason, he's laughing. Kirishima is teasing him, and he isn't mad about it. He likes it. Pulling away, he gives Kirishima a soft shove. What about you then? Anyone take pity on a little kid like you crying about no goldfish? Nope, Kirishima said, easily. That's why I had to get better at it myself. What, if you were at the same festival, would you have given me one? Bakugo lifts his nose in the air. Not a chance. What, even when you had so many? Kirishima laughs in earnest. Oh, good. I wouldn't want special treatment just because you like me. He stops mid-step, turning to look straight at Kirishima, even though his ribs are still reverberating with the force of his laugh. What? Bakugo holds explosions in his hands, can contain the force of them until the exact moment he chooses to let them go. This moment feels much the same, an impossible amount of possibility held in his hands, ready to explode. Has Kirishima finally figured it out? And if he has, shouldn't Bakugo be happy about it instead of panicking? Oh, you know, Kirishima says, waving his hands almost nervously. We're friends, right? Although I guess you would say you tolerate me. Is that right? He really is an idiot. Is Bakugo irritated or relieved? On a good day, Bakugo snaps back, elbowing him. And then only barely. Kirishima smiles with all his pointed teeth, the white peaks like mountains in his mouth. Huh, I'll take it. I've had to work hard for that much, you know. He does know. He knows. And he's been trying to meet Kirishima halfway for ages now. How has he not figured that much out? By the time the sun sets, the sweat is cooling on their backs, but the air is still warm with humidity and anticipation. Streams of people in brightly colored yukata are heading for the riverbank, climbing up to the best viewing positions for the fireworks. Oh, Kirishima says, looking a little crestfallen. Should we have claimed a spot sooner? They pass clusters of Class A students on picnic blankets. Deku with Uraraka and Ida and Todoroki, Yaoyosuru with Jiro and Ashido and Hagakure, Sero with Kaminari and Tokoyami and Ojiro. But Bakugo keeps trudging past all of them, further up the hill. Hey, maybe we should just tag along with someone else, Kirishima asks. We're not going to find a spot so far up, Bakugo. Bakugo turns and fixes him with a look. Kirishima lifts his hands placatingly. Look, I know you're probably the best at scouting firework spots, but people have been camping here for at least the morning, maybe even yesterday. If there's a better spot, it's already taken. Let's just try and find a spot to enjoy from, yeah? You really think I'd invite you out with me and then not have a plan? Bakugo demands. Huh? Kirishima stops, blinking at him in the light of the dying sun. Bakugo shakes his head. Idiot. Hey! Kirishima starts, but Bakugo leans past him to point to a spot up the hill. Way down by the rocks, there's a picnic blanket spread out at the highest point of the riverbank. In Bakugo's own neat handwriting, a sign taped to the blanket reads, Reserved. Move at your own peril. Man, even your handwriting is intimidating. Kirishima laughs. Bakugo huffs, arms crossed over his chest. Wouldn't have worked otherwise, shitty hair. No, probably not, Kirishima agrees. Guess I can't really argue with you. So don't. It really is the perfect spot, in the middle of the riverbank, and at a particularly high point. Bakugo spent half the afternoon yesterday scouting, looking out at the horizon over the river, and imagining what fireworks would look like from each vantage point. He chooses not to mention any of that, as he straightens out the blanket, and waits for Kirishima to take a seat. When he does, Bakugo plops himself down beside him, elbows against his knees, and chin balanced against one fist as he looks out at the horizon. You really worked hard on this, didn't you? Kirishima breathes out. Bakugo shrugs in response. I mean, when you said you wanted to come together, Kirishima, Bakugo says. Huh? Yeah? Kirishima shakes himself out of his thoughts. Shut up, Bakugo instructs. It's starting. Kirishima probably didn't need the instruction. Out of a series of speakers set up along the riverbank, music starts to swell. The sky, gone from deep orange to mauve to navy blue, is still for a moment. A single stream of brilliant golden light shoots upwards, exploding into a corona. On either side of it, a half a dozen other fireworks follow, until the entire sky is lit up with the shadows and smoke and light of some fireworks fading from view, and others bursting to life. Oh, Kirishima says, taking a deep breath. His head is tilted skywards, his eyes bright where the flashing explosions reflect against his irises. There's a space between admiration and awe, where all smaller emotions fall away. He isn't happy looking at the sky. He's positively entranced. Bakugo feels the same way. Except Bakugo isn't looking at the sky. Instead, he's stealing sideways glances at Kirishima. So as not to be too obvious, Bakugo shifts his gaze back to the fireworks. They come in all different colors and sizes, released into the sky in time with brilliant swells and dips of music that surround them from all sides. The crackle and boom of each explosion reverberates through the air, the warmth and light shining down on the audience's upturned faces. Children are laughing and clapping with delight. People are cheering and applauding as each swell dies down. Some gasp in awe, while others whistle in appreciation. The show creates an environment outside each person, something impossible to reach, but equally impossible to ignore. You can't help but look towards the sky when fireworks light it up. You can't help but imagine yourself shooting into the air and bursting with such brilliant passion. You really like this, huh? Kirishima says, softly. Bakugo is shaken out of his thoughts, narrowing his eyes at Kirishima suspiciously. What do you mean by that? Just your face. You look really at peace. Really happy, maybe? It's nice. His cheeks heat up so quickly, he's sure there must be steam rising from his face. Kirishima's been watching him, but he's been watching Kirishima. You don't have to be embarrassed, Kirishima starts to say. I'm not embarrassed. Bakugo cuts him off. Kirishima leans in, listening intently. Behind them, the night sky is continuously illuminated, and under such light there's no hiding from each other. There's nowhere to go, and no one to look at but each other. But Bakugo Katsuki is no coward. I'm not embarrassed, he repeats, and he forces his gaze to stay on Kirishima, the point of his nose, and the shadow of his lashes against his cheeks, the brightness of his eyes, and the way one pointed tooth sticks out to dig into his lower lip. It's just fucking hard to say what I mean sometimes. Okay, Kirishima says, easily. He nods, waiting for the rest. Everyone loves fireworks, Bakugo says, trying to gather his thoughts. Most people, anyway. They're not scary the same way explosions are, even though they're the same thing. They're exciting instead of dangerous. Kirishima nods again. But there's a crease in his brow. He's confused about Bakugo's line of conversation, no doubt. Bakugo growls. I always feel like I'm about to explode. Everyone pisses me off, and we haven't done shit about the villains since last year. Not really, and everyone's getting better with their quirks, and I have to fight to be the best, but sometimes it's different. 5 small streaks of white light go up against the sky, exploding to litter the night with glittering stars. Different how? Kirishima asks. How does he even begin to describe it? Fuck. He finally has Kirishima right in front of him, ready to hear what he has to say. He's gonna choke. Pathetic. Stupid. Pathetic. Wow, Kirishima says, looking away from Bakugo and back to the sky, as a string of fireworks goes off from one end of the riverbank to another. Timed perfectly, they create a wave of light that passes across the sky as the audience bursts into applause. Yeah, Bakugo says, watching Kirishima's face in profile. Like that. Huh? Kirishima asks, turning back to him. I always feel like I'm gonna explode, Bakugo says again. But sometimes, instead of a force that's gonna knock something down or tear someone apart, it's like that. Like fireworks. All the light and sound and feeling. But instead of destroying someone, it's just like that. Wow. Something you've got to stop and notice. He looks at Kirishima imploringly, and Kirishima looks back. When do you feel like that? Kirishima asks. Maybe his voice is drowned out by the exploding fireworks, or maybe he's consciously dropped down to a whisper. Bakugo makes a fist and pounds it against his chest. Right now, he admits, and pretty much whenever I'm with you. Kirishima's mouth opens into a perfect, round O. It's like something's bursting in my chest, but instead of ripping me apart, it just creates this light, this warmth, this feeling that's unsettling, but I don't hate it. I don't hate you. Kirishima smiles wanly. Well, yeah, I hope so. Listen, Bakugo hisses, pushing Kirishima half-heartedly in the arm. I'm trying to tell you something. I'm listening, Kirishima insists. I like you. Bakugo bursts out. Behind him, a dozen fireworks go off, dyeing the world red and orange and gold. Kirishima's cheeks are red, even when the lights fade. Oh, he says. Oh? Good. Bakugo is about to explode, and not in any kind of positive way. But before he can, Kirishima is gripping him by the shoulders and pulling him in close. The air between them is live with electricity, more dangerous than an explosion held in the palm of his hands. When the explosion comes, it's the force of Kirishima leaning up, just slightly, to kiss him. It's the feeling of their lips pressing together for the first time. It's the realization of what this kiss means, that Kirishima accepts and wants and reciprocates his feelings. And then his brain finally short-circuits, and he's got a hand fisted in the front of Kirishima's stupidly cool red yukata, and he's pressing into that kiss with as much force as he can muster. They break apart, gasping, as another shower of fireworks rains down in the sky behind them. You were supposed to say something, Bakugo says accusingly, chest working with the effort of catching up to his breathlessness and all the feelings threatening to overwhelm him. Kirishima reaches out, placing a gentle hand against Bakugo's cheek. Why? He asks. You got what I meant. Bakugo arches a brow, and Kirishima leans in to give him the message, again. Yukata shed and festival long over, Bakugo and Kirishima luxuriate in the warm mineral-rich waters of the baths. Bakugo lies with his elbows bounced against the tiles, head cradled in his arms as Kirishima sits beside him, hands occasionally drifting across his back and lower. You sure you don't want to be alone? Kirishima grins at him. I do, Bakugo grumbles in response. Before Kirishima can even think of pouting at him, he continues. Alone with you, dumbass. Kirishima grins at him, and Bakugo's heart is full to bursting.